everyone, and welcome to a brand new year of me playing along to Tim Holtz 12 tags of 2014, and this is the tag that Tim made, and I'm going to put this as usual on the back of my tags to remind me of my inspiration when I look at the tags that I end up making by the end of the year. So I've got a little idea, a little sketch, and I've got my cardstock here ready to play, and I've got a few metal embellishments that I think I'm going to use. But you do know that things change as you do these challenges, and I've picked out some ink colours that are similar to the ones that Tim used on his tag, and I've got a couple of alcohol inks I might use as well. So this challenge for me is all about making do with the things that I have in my collection and paying homage, if you like, taking the inspiration that Tim gives us and giving it a little twist of my own. And really the fact that you don't always have the things that Tim uses helps you to do this, because you're always thinking of ways that you can stick to the theme, but or perhaps the technique, but use the things that you've got at your disposal. So I'm starting out as I normally do by cutting my 3x6 inch tag, use my template to get the top piece cut, and as you can see here I've got another piece. I like to back my tags, and I've cut it a little bit longer this time because I'm going to use it also to create a pocket at the bottom of my tag, because I'm going to use a real pocket for the pocket watch element of this tag. So I've trimmed my backing tag to size, and then I always place the original size tag on top and just create a fine border all the way around. So using that as a template, I'm just trimming off the two corners. And then I'm using my scoreboard, just lining up the bottom of my tag and scoring it in place where I want to fold the bottom of the tag up to form a pocket. I wanted to find a way to incorporate the lovely embossed metal look that Tim used on his tag, so I've decided to use my actual tag itself to do this, rather than to incorporate it as part of the clock, because I don't have the die. I'm going to create this strip, and I'm going to metal emboss that piece on the front of my tag. I had a little bit of a problem keeping my tag straight on the back of the foil, so I've resorted to flipping the whole thing over, just attaching it lightly, and then I'm going to use my bone folder just to smooth out all the wrinkles. So just be a little bit careful as you do this. It's a bit like using sticky back plastic and trying not to get any bubbles. So that's achieved a nice smooth finish. So I'm just going to trim the edges of my adhesive metal sheet, and then I'm just going to wrap a little border all the way around the edge, so that my cardstock, once it's embossed, will look like a piece of embossed metal. Using my Cuttlebug, I've embossed my little piece of metal, and it's come out lovely. I've used a textile embossing plate. It's an original sort of Cuttlebug plate that I've had for quite a long time. Now, originally my intention was to use alcohol ink to colour this metal, and you'll see me start to do this here, but it really doesn't do it for me, even when I try just adding the ink direct. Like this, it's very light, it's not going to show up as a colour. I did then try just applying the alcohol direct, and this is a much better way of getting a darker colour, and then I was going to just brush over the top with some sandpaper to buff up the top of the embossing, but in the end it wasn't a colour that worked with the base tag when I finished, which you'll see. But I've left this in because it is a nice way to colour up your embossed metal, and it does work, but it just wasn't the right colour for the look that I was going for. I'll go back to that metal piece later and show you a different way to add colour to the foil, and in the meantime I'm going to be inking my tag. So I'm using ice spruce, I'm using pumice stone, and I'm using a little bit of weathered wood. So I begin by adding puddles of these ink these inks, should I say, onto my craft mat, and then spraying them with a little bit of water, and then just swooshing my tag through them. And obviously I've got to remember to also ink the pocket piece. So I start with a base coat which covers most of the tag, and then you'll see that I build up some texture by adding perhaps touches of one colour in one area and perhaps not using as much water, so I get a bit more defined dots onto my tag, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm just picking up little bits of colour and adding them to my tag. Wait till you get to that moment when you're happy with the background, and I just keep working, adding little bits of ink here and there until I'm happy with the overall effect. And it was at this point when I checked the metal that I'd coloured earlier that I realised it really didn't go with my background tag, and it was just all a little bit too bright. So even after I sanded off the top of it, it still wasn't right. So I've decided to go and use distress paints instead. So just finishing off by adding a few splashes of water to my tag and then drying everything off. So luckily for me, I had weathered wood distress paint, and distress paint works brilliantly on metal. So I'm just going straight over the alcohol ink and then letting it dry in between layers. So whilst I'm waiting for that paint to dry, I'm roughing up the edges of my tag, and as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I don't have a distressing tool, but I do have some scissors with a rough edge, and they work quite well. And then I'm using the pumice stone to darken the edges of the tag, the edges that I've just distressed. And the next step that Tim used was to use his stencils to add some more texture to his tag. And I didn't have the clock stencil, not yet anyway, and I also didn't have something that was very fabric-y, which I would have preferred really, but I'm using just these little dots from the Dots Fade stencil just to add some more interest to my background, and the other portion of the tag will be covered with my metal. So just drying off the first layer, and I can still see the alcohol ink through that, and so I'm adding a second layer of paint. Now my embossed metal strip is dry, I'm going to use a little bit of weathered wood on the paint surface, and I'm just working that in with my ink blending tool. Sorry about the shake, a little bit of pouncing there, and I just keep checking the colour to my base tag till I get it just how I want it. And that's the beauty of using inks and paints, you can keep working until you get the actual shade that you want. And then it's time to take your sanding block once everything's dry and lightly sand over the top of your embossed image. And this is a great technique. You could use it on cards, you can use it on scrapbook pages, and it just gives a lovely finish to the metal foil. And I'm just using my sanding block and taking the paint off the raised areas of the design. And I think I'm really happy with how that looks. Just using my baby wipe to rub off any dust, and I've realised I've flipped my metal because it was supposed to be on the other side, if you remember, and I've flipped it over, but no worries, I've just got to trim this side of the tag so that it follows the correct line, and then I'm just roughing it up again and using the pumice stone to darken the edges. You will always see throughout these videos of my tags that I'm always changing my mind. I'm always, you know, you might have an idea to think to go one way, but never be afraid to think, you know what, that's not working. For instance, I thought I wanted lighter metal embellishments, but they're disappearing a little bit into the background, so I'm going to have to darken them up. And unfortunately, I don't have any dark brown distress paint yet, so I'm going to have to use the acrylic, and the cream coat actually has acted as a nice key in this instance. I also didn't have the correct shade of acrylic brown paint either, so I had a ready tone, so I've added some black to knock the brown back a little bit, because this is definitely a cool brown on this tag, and then I've added a little bit of the cream paint, the distress paint, just to make it a little bit more of a creamy shade. So I think this is going to work quite well. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time painting my metal embellishments. So it was at this point that I decided that I wanted a little bit of this dark paint to edge my metal. So I'm just taking my paintbrush and lightly going along the edges of my metal piece. And then I did like the darkened edge, so I'm also going to use a little bit of paint. And I really am being, you know, not too precise with this, just taking a little bit of that paint and rubbing it along the very edge of my tag. And then I'm just using a little bit of weathered wood distress paint, just gently tapping it on to catch the highlights on these little metal embellishments. And it just lightens them up slightly. So now I'm just having a little play, and you can see now I've decided to cut the metal strip to fit so that it's on top of the pocket rather than all disappearing underneath, because it's a real shame to hide all that lovely embossing. And then I'm just working with my metal pieces, trying to decide where I'm going to have things sit on the finished tag. So remember, if you create a pocket and it's created with a fold like this, you're not actually giving your pocket any depth, and because I want to include a little metal embellishment, I want to just give it a little bit of breathing room. I'm not by any means building it up to the depth of the metal that I'm going to tuck into the pocket, but by just adding these two little strips of card that I have inked them so that they don't show at the edges white, and I'm just putting two little strips of card, and then I'm going to glue the pocket at this position and just fold it into place, and it just creates a little bit of room so that it is slightly easier to tuck the clock inside. Now Tim used his number rub-ons down the side of his tag. I actually do have them, but I want to put one line of my quote down this strip of the tag. So I'm going to be using these letter stickers, and I'm really pleased. I'm using my ruler to make sure that I'm going to be able to fit these in, and as you see, I do manage it rather, because the F, the L and the I of Time Flies are quite slim and I can get them close together. I really wanted to use these letter stickers because they do resemble the look of the rub-ons that Tim used. So I'm just being careful about my placement and making sure that I get my two words Time Flies down the side of my tag. As you can see here, another slight change to my design. Instead of having the metal directly below the strip that I've already got in position, I'm going to cut it, or I have cut it, and I'm creating a little bit of a checkerboard effect, which I quite like. And I've raided my chipboard stash, and I've got some little shapes that I'm hoping to be able to turn into wings. I do have what looks like the remnants of a butterfly here, but I don't think they're going to be quite right for these clocks. So I'm going to use these leaves, and they make just the right size wings for my little pocket watches. So I'm working on turning the leaves into wings, and I'm covering them with this little patterned paper that coordinates with the colours that I'm using so far, and I'm also going to back the clocks so that the numbers stand out a little better against the metal background. So I'm literally just gluing the wings onto the pieces of pattern paper and then cutting them out. I've added a little reinforcer again that I punched out of the spare piece of metal that I had left over, and I'm just using my crocodile to put a hole at the top of my tag. I'm beginning to attach all the elements as I finalise their position on my tag. So I've got my hot glue gun at the ready to attach my metal, and I like the look of this. Normally I have ribbons at the top of my tag, but I liked the look of the metal at the top. And I use glossy accents to attach my clock to the paper, and then I'm cutting those out, and I think you'll agree that the numbers stand out much more. Again, using the hot glue gun to attach these cute little wings into position. Now it's a race to the finishing line. So I'm happy with my little flying clocks. I'm adding two little watch hands which look like arrows from Tim Holtz Ideology, and I've got some Lost and Found My Mind's Eye glittery, I don't know what to call them, they're like little resin dots, and they're just the perfect creamy glittery colour to go with my tag. So I'm just going to add a few of those in different positions. So I'm adding a couple of little blue fibres to the tops of these pocket watches, and then they're ready to put into position. So I either like to use hot glue or pin flare silicone glue to attach sort of heavy embellishments like these to my tags. So for speed this time I'm using my hot glue gun, and I'm attaching some more of those little resin dots to my tag. And then so I'm adding a few fibres across the pocket of the tag this time, just tying them in a knot at the side, and that's mainly because I have a little idea for a charm, and since I have no threads at the top or ribbons at the top of my tag to hang a charm from, I'm creating a little place here, and you'll see what I have in mind at the end of this tag. So again, Tim used his little word stickers to create his inspiration words on his tag, and I'm using the same stickers, except I'm finishing off my quote with a little creative theme, and so I'm saying time flies when you are creating, and I think you'll know what I mean. So just inking them up and then using the hot glue gun just to add them to the tag, because it just gives them a little bit of lift rather than using a foam pad. And if you get the placement wrong, just heat them up with your heat gun, and you've got a little bit of room to manoeuvre because the glue melts. Since the back of my tag was looking rather the worse for wear, I've decided to just cover it up with a piece of brown cardstock. And I'm also taking a moment to attach the picture of Tim's tag, which obviously was my inspiration, and I'm just going to attach that to a little piece of blue cardstock, the same pattern cardstock as I was using on the front of the tag, and I'm going to attach it as a reference to remind me of my original inspiration. You can see I also printed out a much smaller version of the picture because I wanted the little logo that Tim uses for 12 tags, and this is the 12 tags of 2014, which also has the month of January. So I intend to do this each month and make a little charm to attach to my tag to remind me which month the tag was made for. And I'm just attaching a little jewellery link to the little charm and then attaching it to my ribbon or my threads that I put on my tag earlier. There's a little bit of a fiddle to get the link closed, but I think that's looking rather cute, so it's worth the effort. And I'm just going to really make it look like a charm by adding the glossy accents to the top of it. And I think that is my first tag of 2014 finished. And I've had some great fun. I really like this blue and brown combination, and the pocket watches was a great inspiration, and I like that it's led me to these cute little flying clocks. So I can't believe we're at the end of January already, but here's my tag. I managed to get it in just on time. The video is a little bit later, but that always takes me a little while. I hope to be a little bit more organised in February, and I can see that Tim, he has got his February tag up already. If you like tags, I definitely recommend you play along with Tim's 12 tags of 2014, and if you decide to, or if you already do, I'll see you over there, no doubt. And in the meantime, if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the near future. Thank you for watching.